Dalton Keene sat at the poker table that night believing he was on the verge of changing his fortune. Cattle, land, maybe even a second chance at life. But instead of deeds or livestock, his winnings came in the form of a 17-year-old Mexican girl whose eyes blazed with something far stronger than fear. The paper in his calloused hands wasn't for land, it was a claim to a human being. And in that moment, everything Dalton thought he understood about winning shattered into dust. The saloon had gone eerily quiet. Only the soft crackle of the fire filled the tense silence. 5 men sat hunched around the battered poker table. Dalton held the winning hand, aces over kings. He should have been smiling, reaching for the pot. But instead, Joaquin Herrera, the Mexican trader seated across from him, pushed forward not money, but a document. "I have nothing left but this," Joaquin said hoarsely. "My niece. She works hard, cooks, cleans. She's worth more than cattle." Dalton felt his throat tighten. He hadn't come here for this. He came hoping to win enough to restock his drought-stricken ranch. After 3 years of brutal dry seasons, most of his herd was dead. At 45, time was slipping through his fingers. The other men shifted in their seats, glancing at one another with discomfort. Dalton pushed the paper back. "I'm not in the market for people," he muttered. "Keep your family." But Joaquin's hands trembled. "Please, senor. Dangerous men, they're coming tomorrow. If I don't pay—" The sentence trailed off, but the warning hung in the air like smoke. Then the saloon doors creaked open. She stepped in young, composed, dust on her shoes, determination in her stride. Her black hair was pulled back tightly, her dress plain but clean. This had to be Esperanza. She looked straight at Dalton, and what he saw in her eyes wasn't desperation. It was quiet defiance, the kind wild horses have before they bolt or charge. "You don't need to do this, uncle," she said in clear, careful English. Joaquin turned to her, tears forming. "Mija, there's no other way. They'll hurt us if I don't pay." Dalton studied the girl. She understood what was happening. And yet, she wasn't panicking. She wasn't crying. She was thinking, calculating. There was sharp intelligence behind those eyes, and something more, something unspoken. Murphy, the saloon owner, growled impatiently. "Well, Keene, take the bet or fold. We ain't got all night." Dalton looked again at his cards. The winning hand. A chance to change his ranch's future. But now, something deeper gnawed at him. He thought of the long nights on the ranch, the echo of empty rooms, the weight of loneliness. No wife, no kids, nothing left behind but land and silence. And now this girl, standing before him like a question he wasn't ready to answer. "What are you really asking me to do with her?" Dalton asked. Joaquin leaned closer, voice low. "She'll help you. With the ranch. With chores. She's strong, stronger than most boys. No complaints." All eyes in the room were on Dalton. Some were amused, others uneasy. But everyone was waiting. "I'm not running a home for orphaned girls," Dalton snapped. "I tried to help families cross the border. I borrowed money for guides, but they never made it. I still owe the men who loaned me the money. This wasn't just about recklessness. Joaquin had risked everything to help others and lost." "How much?" Dalton asked. $300. The room fell completely still. $300. That was more than most men made in 2 years. Enough to buy good breeding stock. Enough to plant an entire season. Dalton looked again at the girl. Her expression was unreadable, not hope, not fear. Something deeper. She was trying to see him, to decide if he was the kind of man who would protect her, or just another threat. "You got any family besides him?" he asked.
"No, señor."
"My parents died 3 years ago." The words hit harder than Dalton expected. An orphan, like he'd once been. No one to fight for her. No one to guarantee she was treated right. And if he walked away tonight, what would happen to her? Still, taking on another life, especially one this complicated, wasn't something he'd planned for. Dalton set his cards down and looked her in the eye. "You understand what's being offered here? Your uncle wants to hand your life over to a stranger. I could be worse than the men who are coming." She didn't blink. Are you worse than them, senor? The question struck like a bullet. She wasn't pleading, she was challenging him. I reckon you'd have to decide that for yourself, he answered. Then she asked another question, one that hit even harder. Do you have children of your own? Dalton's jaw tensed. That ache in his chest returned, the one that never left. No, he said. Because you chose not to? Or because you couldn't? Murphy shifted uncomfortably. Girl, that's not your place. But Dalton raised a hand to stop him. Because I couldn't, he said. My wife and I, we tried. Before she passed. Esperanza nodded. Like that confirmed something she'd suspected. Then you understand what it's like to want something you can't have. To feel like your life's missing something. The words stung because they were true. Since Martha's death, Dalton had been alive but not really living. The ranch gave him work, not meaning. What's your point? He asked, voice low. My point, she said evenly, is maybe this arrangement isn't just survival for me. Maybe it's purpose for you. You need help. I need protection. Maybe we're both not where we thought we'd be. But maybe this is exactly where we need to start. Her uncle watched her in awe, surprised by the way she negotiated her fate like someone twice her age. And for the first time in years, Dalton felt something stir, curiosity. You ever worked on a ranch before? Dalton asked. Yes, senor, she replied calmly. My family raised goats and chickens. I know how to milk, gather eggs, treat sick animals. I can cook, clean, sew clothes, and I can read and write. In both Spanish and English. Dalton raised an eyebrow. And you're willing to do all that for a man you just met? She paused, choosing her words with care. I'm willing to work hard for someone who treats me with respect. Someone who sees me as a person, not a possession. There it was. The real reason she stood there, not to beg for safety but to ask for dignity. She wasn't offering herself as property. She was offering partnership, built on mutual respect. And somehow, she had sensed that Dalton might be the kind of man who could see the difference. What happens when you turn 18? He asked. I'll be free to go, she replied without hesitation. Free to find my own path, maybe marry if I choose. You'll have no claim over me. Dalton nodded slowly. And until then? Until then, you'll have someone to help rebuild your ranch. I'll have time to learn what kind of life I want here. Dalton glanced around. Every man at the table was watching this exchange like it was the final hand in a high-stakes game. Except the cards weren't money or land this time. They were freedom, trust, survival. Murphy cleared his throat. Well, Keen, you gonna play your hand? Or just talk your way into the sunrise? But Dalton already knew his answer. He had known from the moment she walked in, head high, voice calm. It wasn't logic that made the choice for him, it was something deeper. Something that told him this girl deserved a chance, and maybe, so did he. Reaching into his coat, Dalton pulled out his old leather wallet. He counted slowly, 100, 2, 3. It was everything he had set aside for breeding stock, money meant to breathe life back into his dying ranch. He laid the bills on the table without a word. I'm not buying your niece, Dalton said, his voice clear and steady. I'm paying your debt. She'll come work for me, earn her keep. When she's ready to move on, she's free. Joaquin stared at the money, tears filling his eyes.
Señor.
I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to, Dalton replied. I'm not doing this for you. No one should be traded like livestock. He turned to Esperanza. You understand the deal. You work. I provide food and shelter. No strings. When you're ready to leave, you leave. Without hesitation, Esperanza picked up the deed her uncle had offered and tore it neatly in half. I understand, senor, and I accept. Murphy let out a low whistle, gathering up the cards again. The weight of the situation pressed down on them. Esperanza wasn't just hiding from creditors. She was trapped between federal marshals who needed her testimony and murderers who wanted her silenced. What happens if she goes back to Texas? Dalton asked. If she testifies and those men are convicted, she'll be safe, Bradley said, but didn't finish the next thought. Dalton looked at Esperanza. For the first time, he saw the full measure of her courage. a young woman who had carried the burden of her parents' murder for years, now faced with the choice between justice and safety. "It's your choice," he said quietly. "Whatever you decide, I'll stand by you." Esperanza closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Dalton saw that same fierce determination he'd admired from the start. "I've been running from this for 3 years," she said. "But my parents deserve justice. Other families deserve protection from these men." She turned to Bradley. "Tell the marshals they can find me here. I will testify." But as the sheriff rode away, Dalton felt their fragile peace was about to shatter. The men who killed Esperanza's parents were still out there, and they would stop at nothing to prevent her from reaching that courthouse alive. If you enjoyed the story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable Western tale where courage and destiny collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more powerful stories like this. Your support means everything.